Welcome to Adventure Nannies on Air. Today's episode was recorded live during one of our summit sessions as a part of our free ongoing educational webinar series to support nannies and professional childcare providers to elevate their careers and enhance their skills. If you like what you hear, you can catch the full episode on our YouTube channel or register for our next summit session at adventurenannies.com/summit-sessions.
Welcome to tonight's summit session. I am Reagan. I am the marketing director at Adventure Nannies, and I'll be your host for tonight. Tonight, we are going to dive deep into a topic that's super exciting and important in our industry, something we get asked about all the time, and that is contracts, negotiations, and professional standards. It's not just about paperwork, but defining our value and really protecting careers, building sustainable relationships. So we are talking about how to build systems that prevent burnout, ensure clarity, and empower families and professionals. So we are super, super lucky and excited to have two incredible advocates and seasoned professionals here to guide us. Together, they bring nearly 3 decades of combined experience in some of the most complex and high-stakes environments. They are the incredible Tori Blanchard, who has over 7 years of full-time experience working in both high net worth and ultra high net worth fully staffed homes. And she's done it all from live-in roles to her current focus, which is rota work. So I know so many of you are interested in rotational work. So she has experience with all ages, from newborns to specialized newborn care specialist training to teenagers. But really what brings her perspective is really her background. She also has a business degree and served in the Peace Corps for 2 years, which I didn't find out until I was writing your bio, which makes sense though, because she is absolutely amazing. And we also have Caitlin Mariner. Caitlin is an industry veteran with 19 years of industry experience, and she specializes in ultra high net worth and high profile households. She also has a BS in communication, disorder sciences, and an amazing ability to break down complex topics. And she's here to talk about all things contracts, from cost of living and healthcare to travel pay and professional development stipends. And her knowledge comes from years of hands-on experience attending conferences, networking with exceptional agencies and teams, and she is a powerhouse advocate for empowering nannies themselves. Welcome, you beautiful ladies. We are so excited to have you here. So welcome in.
Thank you. We're excited to be here.
First and foremost, you've both said it. This is the basics of this is a profession. So how do you recommend that nannies set the professional boundaries from day one and really define what is a professional nanny?
Well, I think we were talking about this, and I think there's 2 good parts to that question. I think the first part is, how do you set those professional standards and then boundaries along with that? Because I feel like they're different, but they are tied together. So I think the biggest thing is you really, from day one, need to set the professional tone. And that is every word of that, in sense of you need to be on time. You need to communicate well and professionally, down to your emails, down to your phone calls, just kind of all the basics of that. Being professional, you need to be accountable for your actions. So if you make mistakes, don't be afraid to say, I made this error. This is how I remedied it. You just need to be aware of those things. And you need to be presentable, I think, too, just showing up. That doesn't mean you have to dress to the nines or have a peaceful makeup or anything, but you need to make sure you are presenting how you want them to see you as a professional. So I think that starts with just being professional in those senses, And then when you have those discussions about boundaries, they see you and can meet you where you are, showing up professionally. And those boundaries are easier to create once they see you as that professional nanny. So, Kaylin, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but
No, I think you've nailed it. It's just clear communication. It's respecting others' times. It's being honest and upfront about your ideal work environment, your wants for contracts, how you nanny, how you're coming, just honesty and just clear communication right out the gate.
yeah, and I
Absolutely.
think with setting the boundaries with families, that's something that you really have to know ahead of time before you take a job. or position, what you are willing to share and what you're not willing to share and what you're willing to give and not willing to give. I mean, you can definitely decide on the job, but it's a little harder once you start to kind of allow some of those things and then take them back. You really kind of have to think about that, I think, before going into a position. And I would also say, even if your principals are maybe sharing too much, they don't have as many boundaries that you would think they would hold, that does not mean you have to lessen your boundaries to meet them where they are, because you've decided yours, you hold them to you, and just because they're sharing more information does not mean you have to. And about your personal life, everything in regards to that.
hmm And to add on with Tori, when she's talking about jobs in general, you hear her using words like principal. You'll hear her talking about her charges. She is a career nanny. She's using verbiage that is giving power to her profession and how she's coming to each and every household. So we're not talking about our bosses. We're talking about our principals. We're talking about our contracts. We're not talking about work agreements. Just having that language every time that you're coming to a family really helps you step foot with the profession.
I love that. And I'm going to take the opportunity to segue. You talked about the personal lives. I totally skipped though my favorite part of these interviews is where you each give me real quick your 2-minute nanny background and just how you got into the industry, the profession, and just a little bit about your nanny journey.
Sure.
To give us that background of why you guys are talking about this, because that's totally something that I meant to ask you before we got into it. So,
Well, I did the Peace Corps soon after I went to Indonesia. I was a teacher, trainer, and teacher. I worked at a vocational high school in close to Bali in Indonesia. It was wonderful. And after that, I was trying to decide. I had a business degree, but I knew that I didn't really want to focus on business as you see the corporate world. The 9-to-5 job, that was never for me. But lo and behold, had a business degree. So I was like, what can I do? I want to work with kids. I want to travel. Both of those in Indonesia just kind of sealed the deal that I wanted to keep doing it. And so I was diving into different things I could do from there and found Adventure Nannies and started applying, and I received my first position with them. And I was with that family for 3.5 years. I was a live-in full-time nanny, and I worked for them for a long time. We traveled. It was a fully staffed home, ultra high net worth. And I was there for 3.5 years, did some shorter term jobs with families in between. Then started my rota work almost 2 years ago in January. And I was a fly in, fly out rotational nanny for one charge in Florida. And I was based out of PA, and I did that for a little over a year. And then actually went back with the family that I worked for back in 2019 and still do the fly in, fly out rotational. They're located in California, and I'm home based in Oklahoma City. So I fly in, fly out for that position. So that's kind of the background, I guess.
amazing. Beautiful. Caitlin, give us your 2-minute nanny story.
I went to the University of Oregon and studied communication disorder sciences with the want of being a speech language pathologist. I studied American Sign Language and really dove into that. Through my college experience, I was able to work at a child development center that was strongly focused in RIE. And they wanted to educate and train all of us. So I got thrown into RIE and really learned about child-led learning. And after college, I said, I'm going to move to New York. And through care.com, I found a few interviews, and I landed 6 hours later. I interviewed with a family, and I was with them for over 11 years in New York City with 3 children. I ended up relocating to the DC area with them, and through a series of events, I took a position in Columbus, Ohio, working for my first ultra high profile client. And through that position, I found another position in Boston, Massachusetts. I've worked in Asheville, North Carolina, bounced back up to New York for a little bit, and I'm currently in South Carolina working for a family here. So
Amazing.
bounced all
So as you can see, these amazing ladies not only have really, really neat backgrounds, but are so experienced in all of these contracts and in the things that they are going to talk about. They have firsthand experience. So that's why we're so excited to have them here. So we're going to hop back into where we were. um, we're talking about how it's a profession and how we can really define the profession. So let's get back to contracts. We do have a question in the chat that I think is a great way to start off this conversation about contracts. You talked about, Caitlin, calling them contracts and not work agreements. And the question is, aren't contracts defined as a work period for a time with an end date? And 49 out of 50 states are at-will states. So work agreement is technically the correct legal term. We never want nannies to feel stuck in an unsafe working environment because they're incorrectly signed a contract with beginning and end date. My understanding is that nanny work agreements generally don't have an end date defined or a contract period. You guys have any insights or thoughts about that?
Yes. Yeah, I'm very excited. I go for contracts. You can go for a work agreement and not have an end date. That's fine. But with a contract, I do have a year contract. And so each year I'm renewing my contract. I'm renegotiating. I'm getting my yearly review written from my principals. I'm protected with the binding contract with all of the clauses that my principals and I have deemed important for our working agreement. I can't say enough about contracts. I think it protects nannies in so many ways. And you can have a clause in there that you have a 2-week notice period or a 4-week or an 8-week or whatnot. And that goes for giving notice or receiving notice. You can add in a severance clause to your contract and make sure that you're protected. You can ask that all of your benefits are paid out for 3 months after the end of your contract. Whatever you need your contract to be to make you feel secure in your work, you can add that because it's your contract and you get to design that with your principals to make sure that it's a mutually beneficial contract. All about it.
Yeah, I would also agree. You made a good point about not having an end date, but really, this contract should. I mean, this is when you sign it when you receive the job, and it should technically end that first year when you're doing your review. And you should have we're all adding things to our contracts all the time. Hopefully that should then begin another one. And then that one goes until your second year end. I know they don't have a defined end date. I think it helps when you see it. And honestly, though, contracts can change even before then. I've had family situations that had to change, and I immediately asked for a new contract. I said, if family dynamics are going to change, like, I need to rework this contract immediately because that no longer serves this role the way it was. Changing all the time, so I'm fine with the word contract as well.
I was with a family for a decade plus, and I did not have a contract and I did not have a work agreement. I made the same pay for 8 or 9 of those years. That's adding 2 other babies. That's moving, relocating states, adding classes. It's adding play dates. It's schedules. I started cooking for the entire family. My job evolved in such a way I had a great deal. I wasn't protected. I didn't have anything to go back and say, hey, our dynamic has shifted because I didn't have any contract that said what our ever since that experience. They were lovely. That was wonderful. But ever since that experience, I've had a contract, and each year I get to renegotiate and renew my contract. And that is super empowering to be able to say, I'd actually like to add another PTO day, or per my contract, I get a minimum COLA raise this year. Can we sit down and discuss, is that the minimum, or would you like to offer me a 3% raise? There's a lot of benefit. It gives a lot of power to the nanny, but also to the family, and it creates that professional dynamic that Tori was talking about earlier.
I love that. Do you have any insights on field protected? And you mentioned a couple, but I just want to home the fact that you can still be protected in an at-will state with a contract. You define that. What do you want in your contract? Is there anything that you can recommend, or do you take your contract through a lawyer? You're not just reading it yourself. Or is there different things that you can do to feel secure in that your contract is protected? Who do you have read your contract? Who do you help you with that? Those kinds of things. How do you feel secure in that?
Yeah, a lot of us will receive jobs through various agencies at some point. They're a great advocate, and they can help you come up with that and talk about points that might to be talked about with families and just kind of between person. But I would say even if you're not going through you could definitely, if you have someone that is familiar with contract law or contracts in general, whether or not they have a law, I think that's a have it looked at. You could also, if you're wanting more contact or content purposes on what you need to include in there, other nannies and your friends that are nannies, your coworkers, those are great resources for that. I would say agencies, if you're going that way, are going to be your best advocate for your contract.
Absolutely. And I would just add, especially if you are going for higher net worth, high profile, and something that the agencies would coach you on. But if you're not going through one, is if you are going to ask your nanny friends to look at those contracts, make sure they are redacted and all personal information is not included in those contracts that you're sending to your friends.
Yes.
Great reminder, Reagan.
Yes.
That's a
My
great-
little flag went off there.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else to add about that, Caitlin?
I've written in that if in an at-will state that if my contract is prematurely ended, that all of my benefits are paid out and health insurance is covered for 3 additional months after the end of my contract. 3 months is a long time to be covered with health insurance and to have that sort of a benefit. So it's really just tailoring it to what you're needing.
Mhm.
I've
Yeah,
had contracts that had 8 weeks notice period, and that's for an at-will, and that's with the principals or the nanny. That's a long, long time, but that's also where your yearly review and having that in writing comes into play. That's a big benefit because if you're in past your first year into your second and your principals decide to terminate your contract and say it's for fault, you have documentation that you've been a standout employee. And so then you get to advocate for yourself in that way and ask for proof of the contrary.
Yeah, and I would say severance has always been in mine, and I think that's always been, and it increases, every year that you're there. So like the first year, you'll receive 2 weeks of pay and double it as the years continue. So that can really build up, the more that you're with the family. And so that's always been important to include in mine in regards to that.
Mhm.
Love it. Those are some really awesome things that can help you feel more secure. What are the things that every nanny that across the board, if you want to call yourself a professional nanny, whether you're new or experienced, what are the non-negotiable things that every nanny should have in their contract?
2 solid pages of it. So we can just
dive right in. I know, right? I was wanting to take a break and I'm talking. Just let
You
you
love
go.
a note. I think PTO is pretty common, vacation time and sick time. A lot of employers are choosing to lump those in as one and just giving a lump sum of days and saying that you can use them how you feel. I personally ask for a professional development fund or stipend and a PTO day or 2 associated with that professional development. It's helping me continue to build my resume, but it's also adding benefit to my principals and their household. Health insurance is a big one that I think everyone should have, even if it's just a small contribution. If you're asking for that every year, if they're only able to do a small contribution, then I would ask that that's renegotiated every single year. Even adding $10 or $20 every month is I have the yearly review and letter that is presented every year. Whether we're renewing or not, I do get a letter of recommendation. I have a minimum COLA, that's a cost of living adjustment that's set by the Federal Reserve every year, and this next year it's 2.8%. So it's good to know that no matter what, you will get some small percentage, but I always state that that's a minimum, not a maximum. I recently have been asking for a 2-way NDA. A lot of families that we work for, they've been asking that they're protected against disparaging comments. And so I have also been asking the same. Not that I've ever had to use that, but this is my career and this is how I live my life. So I think that's incredibly important for nannies to ask for. I've written in yearly bonuses, mileage if I have to use my own car. It's currently 70 cents a mile, and that's a federal rate. I've had my can and can'ts of my role clearly defined so that I know what my lane is, and everyone else in the household also knows what my lane is.
This is really, sorry to interrupt. This is really
Oh.
important, though, I think, for high net worth and ultra high net worth, especially when you've got like a multitude of staff on hand. I feel like that also defines your role even more so, you know. So I just to throw that out there, I think it's critical when you've got a fully staffed home.
Uh, I agree. I also think for first-time families that might not have had a household employee before, it's important to outline those as well. I've also included allergies, any places that we're not allowed to visit, any people that we're not allowed to have contact with, any specific medical needs. I always have a discipline section so that we're clearly outlining what families deem appropriate or not. I do a medical consent form so that I can seek medical attention for any non-life-threatening treatment that a child might need.
Which I've had to use a couple of times, so they'll come in handy, very much
Yeah.
so, to have on
Yep.
hand.
You hope
Yeah.
you never have to, but
Yeah.
Yeah,
you
you
want
might as
them if
well
you
have
need
it.
them. Yeah.
A credit
So,
card or petty cash fund?
yeah,
Do you want me to keep going, Reagan? Because I've this
amazing list, and I am down to hear it all. I think we should dump the full list for everybody.
Yeah.
And if you don't have any more highlights, talk about how you keep talking about when you come back and renegotiate your contract, how are we asking for more? And we're asking for double our severance and we're asking for more. How do you approach those conversations professionally and respectfully? Especially in the nanny profession, it is such a hard, we have those blurred lines of you're in somebody's home, you're seeing their day-to-day life. How do you approach that conversation in a professional, respectful way and advocate for yourself? Do you have any tips for just approaching that conversation?
Yeah, so I think I have a few, and if I glance down, I'm just looking at my notes. But I think the biggest thing is that when you're talking about, I guess I should back up. So a lot of my principals and I have sat down for various meetings regularly. That can look like weekly meetings, it can look like biweekly meetings, it can look like monthly meetings, whatever makes sense for your family and you as a whole. I think is the first step, because those meetings allow you to discuss an array of things that you need to discuss, and also gives you a chance to maybe start mentioning some of these things so they're not blindsided when it comes time to your yearly review and you have all these thoughts about renegotiation. So I think that's the to go deeper into that, I think when you have those meetings, it's a good time to discuss schedules. And that can be your personal schedule, but also should be your charges schedule, what you guys have going on for the week. So I think that's a good time to do that. And milestones, especially if you have some of the younger kids that are achieving milestones a little quicker and have more going on. I think those are great times to talk about that and how you're achieving them, how you're working on them. If it's also a great time if any are not being met and you see any concerns with that, to discuss that in a very sympathetic way that you can mention. So I think those, and then, you know, if there are any concerns, whether that is communication or just small concerns in the house, I think those are great times to have those. So definitely, I think most importantly is to start that, because then it will make this renegotiation and yearly review easier when you get down to that. But just in general, for the conversation, I really think you need to come to it grounded. Even if we all have those days. And if your meeting is that day, you can't really help that. But try to ground yourself before going in there, because you don't want to come in hostile or defensive. Really, even if you have a lot you want to talk about, you gotta just try to ground yourself and get there. And then I think you need to be really confident in what you're saying. That doesn't mean you know everything. It means that we all have so much to learn, but that what you do know, you are very confident about, and you are bringing that to them. And if you don't, and which I have many times before, I will say, oh my gosh, that's a great point. I don't know the answer right this second. I will do some research. I would like to get back to you in our next meeting. Just to reassure them that, oh, I know all about that. I don't, but I will find your answer and I will find you resources to get you your answer and bring that to the next meeting. So that goes along with being really prepared for those meetings. Even if it's on your phone during nap time or you're doing something, maybe make a list of things you want to discuss and have responses prepared too if you are struggling with that. If you think you get to the conversation and don't feel like you'll be as direct as you want to be. Having things written out is really crucial. That way, you know what you can say and you can rehearse those things. And I think it's so important to say them out loud, because the more you say them out loud, even just to yourself in the bathroom, the more you say them out loud, truly the easier it does get when you are face to face with your principals and you're discussing this. And definitely take it from, a lot of us will use I statements, I feel, I see, which are the best way to approach those things instead of you. I have an example. Instead of you are always late to relieve me at the end of the day, you can just say, I'm often here later each day than my contracted hours. We should revisit my schedule and see if there's any changes we can make to a more accurate time to end my shift. If you don't already have overtime hours, you can definitely add in, I don't mind staying the extra amount of time, but I would like to discuss an overtime rate. Those are great times to kind of use that, but definitely from an I statement and not a you are doing this, you've done this type of place. And then I think the right time and right place, which if you're having your weekly meetings, I assume you'll find a central location to have them. And so that will just be where you have them, and you'll also discover a time that works for everyone. I always say the children should definitely not be present in these, especially because you're could be talking about some sensitive health or milestone things, and they just don't need to hear any of that. So children should definitely never be present in those. I've had these discussions during nap time. That's worked really well. Or at the close of my day, if they're already asleep or in their bedrooms. I've also had these conversations then. Whatever kind of works for you guys. And then I guess the last thing is to be direct but empathetic. If they're saying, I can't do this, and you can say, oh, I understand that. I really do. But you have to be direct in saying, this is what I want. And show them how you have done what you have done this last year. And I think you just need to be direct with what you're doing and saying. I don't know if you have anything to add, Caitlin, but that was all.
Yeah, I think these meetings, these check-ins, not only are they a way for you to express your needs and wants or concerns, but they're a way for you to assert that this is a profession and you're coming to this household as a professional. You're wanting to check in and making sure that the care that you're providing and the attention to detail and their children that you're offering in their home is up to par with their expectations. I think it's also good to come not only with your own questions prepared, but also being prepared to receive feedback or information that maybe was not on your list and they're now wanting to discuss. But that's open communication, and that's how you're building trust in a relationship. So just being prepared both ways, because when I was a new nanny, I was not always prepared. I had my concerns, and that was on the forefront of my mind. So getting that feedback sometimes really threw me for a loop. And then my concerns or questions were never addressed because we were now talking about a different scenario.
Yeah, and I would add to that. Yeah, I've done it with a lot of my past families. There's a lot of different sheets out there that you can find. I think Homework Solutions does one, but there's reviews for your principals to kind of fill out ahead of time if you don't know where to start with a review or anything like that. But then there's also some that are out there, or I've even created my own, where you can kind of do the same for your principals in a way, just communication. So whether or not you actually show them that, you can have that ready to have points that you want to discuss. So it's a review both ways for both of you.
Right. And I always tell my principals, I don't care if you need to write it down, email it, call me, text me, face to face. I don't care how you need to get me the information. Not everyone is good with a face-to-face conversation, but I need the information. However hard it is to hear or to share or whatnot, I need to know. I'm in your home. I'm taking care of your precious humans. I need to know. I don't care how you get it to me.
That is a great segue into the great question we have in the chat about this. Nora wants to know, when you're hitting contracts, broaching the topic of additions to the contract and receiving the letter of recommendation without them thinking that she's quitting, all these things, she was thinking about putting them in an email or folder so parents have time to discuss and they don't feel awkward because they were not expecting a renegotiation. So how would you approach, I guess broadly, they weren't expecting it, now they are, and possibly there's some things that to add that have become permissible, they're no longer okay with. It's going to be possibly an awkward conversation. How do you have any tips for how to start that conversation? Would you send that email ahead of time with some details? Would you just have to sit down? How would you approach that?
A month out from my 1 year, I let them know, hey, we're 30 days out from my 1 year. It's super important to me that we find a time to sit down. Can we schedule a time now? And just so you know, when we sit down, I will have some notes, some contract alterations that I'd like to discuss. I just want to prepare you now. I'm not entirely sure what they are because I don't want to start that conversation now. I want it in 30 days. I'm really looking forward to fleshing out those ideas and coming to you with a proposal. So it's just right off the bat when we have that conversation, I've got ideas. And maybe it's that I'm going to ask for a 3% raise instead of the federal 2.8 that's being offered right now, or an extra PTO day. Or maybe it's grandiose, who knows? But they're already prepared to have that discussion because I've prepped them 30 days in advance. And you can even tell them a week before. I've been working on ideas. I'm really excited. I've been jotting down some things. I'm really excited to share them with you. I can't wait to hear what we come to agreement on. So it's just always being brought up.
Yeah, well, and setting that tone, that positive tone about you're excited. It's not something scary. I think that's something that I just took away from what you said for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think even if you get to that meeting and they do seem very stunned or it does reach that point, I always am okay with, I know this is a lot of information. I know this is a lot to look over. You may have to readdress your budget and various things. I'm very comfortable waiting and schedule that in there, or say, I would love to hear from you by this day with a response, because that also gives them time. They're not having to sit in that meeting or yearly review and be like, oh my gosh, we need to talk about, they need to talk to their other network too.
Yeah.
So I think that's really great too. If you need to give them a little bit more time, say, we can rediscuss this in a week. I know this is a lot of information I've given you.
And everyone knows their principal better than anyone else, right? We're in their homes. We talk to them every day. We know them. So maybe your principal is the person that, hey, I had these ideas. We're meeting next week. Can I send them over to you now so you have time to process and really understand what I'm asking for so we can have that discussion on our scheduled date? Or maybe they need the time after the fact, but you'll know your principal best and when they need to be presented that information. But it's advocating for yourself. Talk about it all day long.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. And then since I waited to my 1 year, should I wait a couple months for the new contract to kick in? I don't think so. I think you chatted, you've given them the heads up, get it on the calendar and get it done at this point. I know it's hard, but get it done.
I also have to say that I think I forgot to mention it earlier, but a lot of times people can get really awkward with sitting in the silence after you have given some information and they're thinking about it. There is. And don't try, I know it's hard, try your hardest not to fill those moments of silence with additional information or additional things. Let the silence be silence, you know? If you have to count in your head to 10 or something, or just to something in your mind to distract you, let that silence sit there, because the more you say, not always is going to be helpful to the reasoning.
Yeah. I get really agreeable when I'm nervous. I'm like, oh, never mind. We can just do like 2%. It's fine. Like, never mind. But I also wanted to, Nora, I think all of these conversations, it's just information gathering. And your employers might say, nope, it's not for us. Nope, we don't want to do that. Nope, we don't. All of that. It's just your answers to the questions. So then you get to have all the answers and then decide where you need to go from that. If that's applying for more positions, are you feeling comfortable just staying there for the time being, or a shift in careers, whatever it may be, but you're just information gathering. I forgot what I was going to say. My cat just...
Okay. Well, I have that written out too, because I don't ever like to threaten to quit any position. But it's not even a threat, but at that point, if you've already brought this up to them, if they've thought about it, you've come back and met, and everything is no, 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 then at that time, you have a right to say, okay, I'm going to have to reevaluate a lot of these things just so that I can continue to afford the cost of living in this area. I'll get back to you. And that's when you use all the information you have to reevaluate your situation, because at the end of the day, actually, I have a story from today at brunch, which is a whole side note. So I went to brunch today and I messaged Caitlin about this immediately. So I was sitting, there's a table not right next to me, but right over. And I noticed that she was talking about her nanny. And so this mom was talking about her nanny. So I was like, oh, I gotta listen to this. And she was saying she wants $20 an hour and her overnight rate is $200 and all the things that sometimes we hear. She's just sleeping, why is her rate that high? Just blah, blah, blah. But she said at the end of it, she said, I guess I'm gonna have to figure it out because we like her and she works with our schedule. And so I was like, I think a lot of times we're so afraid of that no, which could very much happen. But I think we don't give credit to the fact that there could also be a yes, and she doesn't like any of those rates, but she clearly is going to keep this nanny because it definitely works for her family. So I think little things like that, I always think about they're going to say no. It's not like they're going to say yes, but I'm always usually surprised by what I get. So in response, I just thought that was funny that happened today.
Yeah.
I love it.
I think just to add on I think 2 years ago at Nanny Camp, there was a speaker there, or maybe it was just a breakout, but someone said that if you stay in your same career or with your same family for 5 years, you will be making the same hourly that the new nannies on year 1 are making. So that's where I'm talking about the contracts and, advocating for yourself for professional development and all that, because we worked really hard to get where we're at. We don't be back down here. We want to make this better for everyone else that's coming up, but we also want to, value what we've poured into ourselves and these families in our career. So really keeping that in mind when we're talking about contracts.
Yeah. And each time I feel like you stand up for yourself in various ways, big or small, you're setting the tone for the nannies that are coming after you and in the jobs that are, that they're coming into. So I feel like it's like not only our right, but we need to do it because we are setting the tone for the future of this profession. And I think I can speak on everybody that we love this profession and we want it to continue tenfold. So I feel like that's just a big part of that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I can't tell you how excited Tori and I were talking about industry standards last week or so.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
We're going to jump into our question and answer session. Got about 15 minutes left. Claire, you've got your hand up. Did you have a question for our lovely guest?
Yes. Hi, ladies.
Hi,
Tori,
Claire.
that was such a positive story. I love that story. Thank you for sharing that. That felt very inspiring. But I actually wanted to touch on something you said earlier. You said when you approach these meetings, obviously you're prepared. You're bringing the things you said that you've accomplished over the past year. I'm a special needs nanny and I work primarily with children with autism. So in regards to milestones, things look a little bit different. I can't always say that we've hit this and this just for the nature of the work that I'm doing. So I just want to hear from you and Caitlin, just in general, what are the kind of things you're bringing to meetings in terms of what you've accomplished with the kids?
I have to say, I don't currently work with any kids that are on the spectrum, but I do work with a child that has ADHD, and my wins may be really small. They may be really small for that day or that week, but they are as simple as my charge went straight to the shower versus getting so distracted. It's going to be a small win or milestone, but over time, those add up tremendously. So they just look a little different, I feel like, but they're still such big wins, when you have them. So thank you so much for asking that. Because often I think my wins they're not the same with my charge with ADHD versus my other charges. They're just as important and it may be small, but it's a win and a milestone achievement, Go ahead. I don't know if you have anything to add, Caitlin.
I do any and everything. So, I mean, again, they're small things. They don't have to be big. We know that development is a spectrum and it just happens how it happens. So, this week we had one day where we were on a really great nap schedule and we slept through the night. that was our win. So, I'm bringing small things like that. It doesn't necessarily have to be for the entire year. It could be more present things in our mind. But we had our first family trip. So when I have my year review, I'll be talking about like how wonderful that trip was and, how we effectively communicated and navigated travel and, all of those things. But that happened a year ago. And then I'll probably mention, if we're on an established schedule and how that's going, or did we try a new food, twice this week, or, just small moments, but they mean a lot to our principals. I mean, they're the parents of these little humans, and they get really excited when we squiggle a line with a crayon instead of throw the crayon, So it doesn't have to be big wins to be really exciting and something of value to a household, to a family.
Yeah. What are their goals? We have another awesome question, and then we'll go to Claire after that. This one's in the chat. How can nannies ask for professional development contributions, and what counts as professional development? Classes, certifications, etc. And I'll add on what we're all asking. How do you also ask them to pay for nanny camp? Does that count as professional development stipend? But yeah, how do you ask for that? Like,
Yeah.
and what would you include?
I think the easiest ask is maintaining your CPR and first aid certification. That is crucial, in my opinion, to any nanny, any professional in childcare in general. So just asking for them to reimburse for that. But I've gone as far as to, hey, this conference, it was at Nanny Palooza. This one speaker's here. I've been reading and all about them and following them, and they're talking about child development in XYZ, which is really applicable to where we're at currently. And I'd love to go pick their brain, hear what they're sharing, hear how the industry has changed. What do you guys think about that? And then just asking for them to pay for a portion of that. I think professional development could be as simple as, will you pay $20 a month for me to purchase a book on child development, a Rye on Reggio, or I don't know. There's so many different ones.
Yeah.
It can be really simple, and it doesn't have to be huge, but it's helping
Be
you
your Audible
in your career.
subscription or
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the same. And I mean, even if it's small, like that's going toward, going towards your further learning and helping them. So like I even if you don't have one, I do recommend starting small. That way, your principals can kind of get comfortable with that too. But I mean, yeah. I mean, and there's INA conferences, and I include Nanny Camp. So there's Nanny Camp as well. There's just so many conferences and ways that you are going to be able to better yourself for your principals and your family. And they might need a little bit more at the beginning, like a book. They might need to know exactly what it is just to get comfortable with giving that stipend. But that's when CPR, first aid, books, that's a good way to kind of start out so that they can become comfortable with that.
And point out how you're using it. If you're reading a book because they were only comfortable with the $20, say, oh, look at this block tower. We've been working on stacking blocks. It was this method that I read in this book where you're, talking about the colors and the shapes and, all the things. Community colleges also have child development courses that you can take. Usually they're a little bit cheaper. Child development centers at universities often will have conferences that you can pop into. There's lots of little things. There's seminars online. So, there's free ones that you can do from Newborn Care Solutions. You can take one of her free ones and then just say, oh yeah, on my own time, I watched this lesson and now I'm applying it here. I'd love to take the class that Tanya just rolled out. It's this much and it covers this, this, and this. It's great.
Or I know also we touched on it at Nanny Camp because Dr. Jen was there. The Formator course she came out with is a wonderful example. You can bring out like people that have reviewed her course and show what it's all going to teach you to bring to your table. So there's just so many out there.
Absolutely. Those are all great tips. I love it. We'll make sure we drop the Formator course in the link because that is a really awesome one. Claire, what is your question for our lovely guest?
So I had to bring more short-term content. I'm just curious what y'all have to say about that. And I guess one question I have is, Is it standard to do insurance in there, or is it a higher rate, or does it just depend?
For a short specific.
Yeah. Like 6 weeks, let's say.
I mean, my contracts when I have done shorter term positions haven't differed that much from my long term contract.
Mhm.
I feel like obviously if it's a short term contract, they're not going to be able to provide, 401ks and actual
Yeah.
health insurance through them, obviously, because of the short term. But I still have the same amount of stipend in there because my insurance hasn't changed just because it's a short term contract.
Mhm.
So there are hours and maybe some like PTO and sick time that are all a little bit different, from short term just because of the nature of it. But I feel like the fundamental things like healthcare and such as that they don't really change or they haven't changed for me
Okay.
short term. But I also haven't done a ton of short term contracts. So I, can't fully say, but for me, it hasn't differed too much.
Mm-hmm.
I would just say have your rate reflect exactly what you need covered. I don't think you need to break it out for
Yeah, I just,
such
I
a
do
short
have
cost.
a higher rate, especially like for Asheville. So I didn't ask for insurance, but then I was kind of reflecting. I was like, it actually I think would be in my favor to maybe charge a little. Like I would be willing to charge a little bit less than get the stipend because the stipend wouldn't be taxed.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's like you actually kind of I don't know. That's just something I'm figuring out, but I just wanted to ask about that. And then one thing I wanted to share, something that worked really well for me in the past with a family, I had a running Google Doc with them. And it was good for I mean, I think it's really important to have, obviously the contract discussion. I really enjoyed what you guys were saying about that. But it was really helpful to kind of, some things. What's a good example? We used it a lot for like, hey, like, the baby, I don't want to say his, I almost said his name. Anyways, he is potty training, like, and this is what we did over the weekend, just because it seemed like I feel like things get lost in text a lot, and it was just really nice to have that Google Doc.
So like those I've definitely had. And with employers, I like to stick to email, but that is my personal preference. So a lot of the like milestones and things reached, I tend to, I guess pictures more so like message, but everything else that we've been discussing can be, I that can be a Google Doc, but I usually send everything through email. But I think that's more my personal preference and maybe what my principals also I could tell would be their preference.
Too, that's just finding the communication method that works. I've used notebooks, I've used Signal, we've used WhatsApp, all the different options. So especially when you're rota working with your teammate on communicating most effectively for both of you. But then also I've had parents just ask for face to face and that they'd prefer no pictures sent or anything, that we just share in person.
Amazing. I'll say we've got about 5 minutes left and a couple questions in the chat. So I want to make sure we get to them. The one about approaching contracts, if you start one without one, we talked about that with Brittany in our last summit session. So just for time's sake, I'm going to refer and send the thing for that so we can chat through a couple of these other ones. And then the other caveat to this is because we have so many more questions and some of them we're going to talk about, Tori and Caitlin are going to come back for a part 2. So drop all your questions. If we don't get them to them tonight, we will come back and have a part 2 of this.
And also, sorry to interrupt, Reagan, but that's kind of also, we haven't been steering as much to the Rhoda thing because that's like a kind of a whole other ballpark.
Yeah, that's what I was like. I think those ones are going to have to wait only because they'll get so big. So we can even talk about contracts more. And then especially, like the Rhoda, the healthcare stipends. We talked a lot about that with Homework Solutions too. But up to a certain amount, they are non-taxable benefits. So details on
is what
that.
it's called.
There we go. Thank you. QSERA. Yes. So get a QSERA as long as it's set up properly, then it is non-taxable. So let's talk about this super fun question though. What are the high-end benefits we're asking for? Retention bonuses, we talked about a little bit, but if you have the full benefit, you have 401k already. What are the higher end when you are, asking for these benefits? What are some of the fun ones that you've heard of, whether you're asking for them for yourself? We've got some fun ones, others in the chat that we can chat, but I want to hear your guys' first.
Well, Tori and I were talking earlier about my rota experience paired with her rota experience. And she had mentioned that she did not have PTO. And I worked 1 week on, 1 week off. And I had requested and received 2 weeks PTO on top of my rota position, which was
Wow.
me. And I also, what I thought was the best one that I've ever had, I asked for 20% of my gross as a bonus end of year cash.
Yes.
And that was
Yeah, those. Yeah, I agree. I have done the same with the year end bonus, and I definitely prefer cash or check, more so cash than anything. But I think one we also talked about was if you are a rota travel nanny, which I know we've getting into that conversation, but having them cover TSA pre-check and clear. We are in the airports all the time, so it's just essential to kind of cover those. But I guess in regards to like
flying first.
what?
I was saying that was one of ours in the chat.
Flying
Business
first.
class flights, first class flights. I know you ladies. I get some fun
Gotta
photos
lean
every
cheese
once in a
plate.
while. Exactly. Gotta get the cheese plate and all the good snacks, right?
We are rating all those first class meals. See which one's the best. We'll come out with their
And that's where we talk about, like, we talk a lot about, what is a perk versus a benefit. These are the perks that you can negotiate for, the kind of icing on the cake. They're not the things that make or break your life, but they're perks. So these are like the fun things that you get to ask for when you are at this elite level and you have proved your professionalism and you show up professionally.
Mhm.
So,
And I think that goes with like, obviously a lot of people may match or if they're not already matching your 401k to, you can ask, which I assume they are though, matching your 401k or already giving a certain percentage into it. But yeah, just increasing, like, I mean, it's just, there's so much, which I know will like kind of really like write out that document, but extra travel stipends when you're traveling, like when we are in our summer location, I get an extra $300 a week for groceries. And that's on top of everything else that I already, because it's higher cost and it's less accessible where we are. So just some of those things, like you said, they're like perks, but those are kind of like my non-negotiables when it comes to like different places and what we're doing.
I had my pet sitter was paid anytime that my family wanted to travel. That was something that was covered from my employers, which was wonderful.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's lots of fun ones. I mean, people have been given work cars that are also their personal vehicles that they have full access to. I had a friend that it was written into her contract that she had a week at her employer's vacation home that she got to use it whenever.
that's amazing. I see in the chat, we have one for physical wellness program or gym membership. I think
Yeah.
that's an amazing, because that's such an easy sell too.
Mhm.
You want to be your best self. You want to show up at work your best self and having that support. And so it's such an easy sell because that is what's supporting your health and your ability to show up your best self in your role as well.
Mhm.
So I love it. We are at time. So I'm going to cut off because I could chat all night with you ladies, but we will come back for part 2. So stay tuned. Thank you guys so much. Thank you everybody in the audience who brought questions or was just here to participate. And like I said, we'll be back for part 2. So if you have any questions that you didn't get answered tonight or things that come up, feel free to send an email to myself. If you've got Tori or Caitlin's number, shoot it to them, shoot it in our stories, Instagram, and we will come back for part 2 to answer some more questions.
I just want to throw it out there. Like, if you already follow us on socials or anything and you are kind of having specific questions, you can feel free to reach out. We do need to collect NDAs and everything in regards to that. But other than that, I feel like we could still help you even, without that information.
Yeah.
So if you have any questions, like I'm always an open book, so you can reach out.
What's your Insta?
Oh, my Insta's at _Blanchard. It is private. I keep it that way just for family purposes and everything. So, but please request follow me. Yeah, I'm Facebook, Instagram. I don't do much other than that, though.
Yeah. I'm Ask Day Day. So let's chit chat.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So excited. Thank you for being here, everybody. And we will see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye. And that's a wrap.
Thank you so much for spending a little bit of your day with us.
We'd love to stay connected. You can find all of our past episodes and summit sessions on Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast fix.
For the inside scoop on the latest job opportunities and community stories, you can always find us at adventurenannies.com or come say hi on Instagram, Facebook, or Blue Sky.
If you loved this episode, we'd be over the moon if you leave us a review. It's a huge help in getting the word out to other folks.
And if you hated this episode, well, we're sorry. It can't have been that bad if you made it this far, right?
We'll catch you next time.